Well, good morning, Greene County. I'm really pleasantly surprised that people actually attended. I was going to do this from home today because I didn't figure anybody would be here working. So I'm glad you guys all came. We're just going to spend a little bit of time kind of talking about the year in review at the juvenile office, our little cubbyhole down the road here. And so I've kind of thrown together some statistics to kind of tell you what we've done this year, talk about some of the initiatives that we've been involved in this year, and then kind of talk about a few of the trends that we anticipate seeing. Relative to child abuse and neglect and delinquency coming the next year or so. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end for questions. But if anybody has any questions while I'm yammering up here, please feel free to ask away. I hope you enjoyed the festive New Year's background that I've used on the slides at great expense through Canva. And boy, this thing's really sensitive here. Why is that going that way? Let's see. There we go. Okay. So some statistics. We love statistics at the Greene County Juvenile Office. You've probably heard us brag about our quality unit. Rachel and Tanya and Alex do a great job of counting the beans for us, and in so doing, we've really been able to sort of formulate policy and make some adjustments in terms of how we handle the youth and families that come to us. So these are numbers. I think these are through most of November of this past year. So these do not include any statistics that have come in since about the 1st of December. But in terms of law and status referral, so when we talk about a law and status referral, a law referral is what's known as a delinquency referral. And delinquency, those are criminal acts if committed by an adult, but when they're committed by somebody who's under the age of 18, they are considered a delinquent referral. So those are things ranging from stealing to assault to murder to rape to robbery. Basically, any criminal activity that an adult can do, so too can a kiddo. And we received roughly 2,132 referrals year to date for kiddos who have engaged in that delinquent behavior. Then we have what we call status referrals, and these are called status offenses, and these are offenses that are only against the law because of the age of the child. And so these include things such as running away from home, not going to school, being beyond parental control, engaging in behaviors injurious to yourself or others. So, for example, if I ran away from home, other than probably delighting my spouse, she could not call the police and have me brought home. Brought home. She probably wouldn't call the police. She'd probably say, "Stay gone." On the other hand, if my kiddos, who were they're now adults, but if they had been juveniles, if they were under the age of 18, that would bring them within the jurisdiction potentially because of their age. So that's what a status referral is. They are incredibly difficult kiddos to deal with. We often say we would rather deal with somebody who's committed murder than somebody who is beyond parental control because they're easier to deal with, quite frankly. These kids are really, really pretty problematic sometimes. And then we get what we call FYI referrals, and this would be the Greene County Sheriff's Office or the school police would contact us and say, "Hey, we encountered this kid, 2 o'clock in the morning, weren't really doing anything that we could catch them for, but we just thought we'd let you know just in case you have them on probation or you have some kind of case involved and that kind of thing." So quite a few referrals that we have received. And I'm going the wrong way again. Yes.
Sorry. So does that mean that even the police officers would not have access to your database to know about juvenile, somebody with a juvenile record because it's that protected?
It is. And so they, many times our detention will receive calls from law enforcement, say, "Hey, we've got Johnny Smith here. You have him on paper, anything going on with him?" So yeah, so those are not accessible to law enforcement. Now, a lot of local law enforcement just know these kids because they encounter them all of the time. So that gives them a heads up there. One of the things that we're very proud of at our office is our diversion program. So even though the prior slide, showed, was it 2,500 some referrals, we are able to divert a significant portion of those referrals. And when we talk about diversion, we're talking about situations where we do not open a formal case on these kids, and we send them down to 933, where we have our diversion officers. And why that is important is because statistically it shows that if a kid has a formal case number opened on them in the juvenile system, their likelihood of going deeper into the juvenile system becomes significantly more increased. A lot of behaviors that we see um, just occur because they're kids. We were all kids, I think, at some point in time. And, we often talk lots of times about juvenile laws and so much about guilt or innocence, but caught versus uncaught. And I suspect that a lot of us here were just uncaught and fortunate enough. And we grew out of a lot of stuff. So a lot of the first time referrals that we get to our office, we're able to deal with them sort of on a voluntary basis. We have, I think an 85 or 88% success rate with these diversion kids, where we never see them again. They don't get deeper in. So we're very happy with that. So of those referrals, we sent about 630 of them to our diversion unit. Um, they are assessed using a thing called CANS, which kind of puts them on a ladder of risk. And then there's action plans that are done with the youth and the families. And again, many of those cases, they'll work that action plan. We'll never see them again. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't, and they do get deeper in the system. But we've been very happy with the work that our diversion unit has been doing for sure. Okay, child abuse and neglect. So, when we're talking about child abuse and neglect, we're talking about in abuse cases, cases where there has been some sort of affirmative action taken toward a child by a parent, guardian, or custodian. So, again, we're talking about physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, that type of thing. And then neglect, we're talking about cases of omission by a parent, guardian, or custodian. So there we're talking about, dirty houses, failure to send kids to school, failure to obtain proper medical treatment, creating environments for kids, that are fueled by drug usage and domestic violence and things of that nature. So we had 470 referrals year to date from the Children's Division and other sources involving allegations of child abuse and neglect. Of those 470 referrals, we ended up filing 424 petitions, because for us to do any work on a case, that case has to be legally sufficient. Um, there are some cases that we see that just, they pull at your heartstrings. You go, boy, I would never want my kid to grow up in a situation like that. But poverty does not equate to neglect. And so there has to be legally sufficient grounds for us to work on a case. So that's why we don't take every kiddo or file a petition on every referral that we receive. And then we remove 366 kids from their parent, guardian, or custodian and place them in alternative care. Sometimes we're able to divert those kids to relatives and things of that nature. Again, it's sort of our goal to touch these families as lightly as possible, because again, removal from parents and that kind of thing is oftentimes as traumatic, if not more so, than the environment that those kiddos were growing up in. So we right now have, I don't know, Brittany, 630, 640 kids in care right now in Greene County, which is still way too many, but we're seeing that trend line go down, which is definitely a good thing. These are outcomes that we've had on our cases, and again, one we're most proud of is that our reunification rate has been going up year after year the last several years. So when we do remove kids from their homes, working with our collaborative partners in Children's Division, other contracted agencies, CASA, all those folks that are involved in dealing with child abuse and neglect, we are able to help the parents adjust those circumstances, situations that led those kiddos to come into care. And so we have been seeing our reunification rate go up. We've been seeing our adoption or termination of parental rights rate go down, which again, It's a good thing. So you can see that we're reunifying almost 50% of the time. About 29% or 27% or so are going through termination of parental rights and subsequent adoption. And then we have other outcomes, which can include guardianship with relatives or some other placement. Sometimes kiddos just age out of the system. Those can be successful, age out sometimes. Oftentimes, they are not. So those are our kind of child abuse and neglect outcomes. So any questions so far on any of that kind of good stuff? Okay. All right. Well, so some trends and accomplishments that we saw at the juvenile office this year. As many of you know, we have a family dependency treatment court that we run out of the Greene County Juvenile Office and the Greene County Juvenile Court. And this is kind of the child abuse and neglect equivalent of drug court when you think about what goes on, in adult court where somebody has adult criminal charges or DWIs or things of that nature. And so we have a family dependency treatment court that has run for, gosh, I think since 2004-ish. But of late, we've been able to obtain some additional grant funding and things of that nature. And so we have a whole team over there at the juvenile office. It's housed in our clinical unit. And so we have a clinician, we have a deputy juvenile officer assigned to the case. We have peers, and these peers have really been difference makers in these cases. So a peer is somebody with a lived experience who, has kind of walked the walk and has gone through their own experience with their own kids in the system. They are in recovery, and now they work with these families who have lost their children for the same reasons. And they've been deal makers because they are credible messengers. A parent is going to listen to somebody who's been down the same road as them. And so our family dependency treatment court has been it's an intense program. I think it's been effective. I think our numbers are starting to prove that out. And we were recognized along with seven other jurisdictions nationally as a peer learning court. They used to call them peer mentoring courts. They don't like to use the word mentor anymore because they think that means that you know everything and you're just dispensing wisdom. But the fact of the matter is that even though you may have reached a certain level of knowledge, you're still learning things. So now they call us peer learning courts. So that has enabled us to get additional levels of technical assistance. We become a model for other courts who are starting or having problems in that regard. And so our family treatment court program is really up and kicking tail. I think Deb and I have had a lot of fun with the federal grant end of it. As anytime you deal with the feds and balancing your books and all that kind of stuff, it's a lot of fun. But I think in the last since 2019. I think between the two grants we've received and the one we're working with Borough Behavioral Health on, we've run close to $4.5 million in grant funding that we've obtained to run those courts. So that's been very impactful, I think, for our families. Our court and office was also selected by the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, who we've been working very intimately with the last several years. We've become a peer mentoring court in child abuse and neglect, and we were recognized back in, I think summer. Several of us went to Anaheim and were presented with that, and so that recognizes the best practices that are going on, in our court. We have very progressive juvenile judges, which is very helpful. We have judges who I've always told, Judge Hosmer that he and I are bad karma because we've never met an idea that we don't like. We've probably thrown 100 of them up against the wall and maybe 50 of them stick, but those that stick have been pretty good. And so again, it's been through a large part of judicial leadership and things of that nature that we've been able to see the good results that we've had in our child abuse and neglect court. So again, that'll provide us with additional training opportunities. Will provide us with the opportunity to help other courts and provide good services to the youth and families that come before them. Then most recently, we were selected by the National Center for Juvenile Justice. This was through a competitive application process to participate in what's called a dual system youth prevalence study. That's a mouthful. But basically, what we talk about when we talk about dual system youth prevalence is this idea that these kids that come to see us are the same kids, whether they come to us through the abuse and neglect side of things or whether they come to us through the delinquency and status side of things. Kids who come to us through delinquency and status, we often find that there's a lot of abuse and neglect going on in the home. These kids don't develop this way in a vacuum necessarily. And then again, kiddos who are in the child abuse and neglect system, we often see them involved in delinquent behavior. And it's a really kind of a tough cat to skin in terms of dealing with these kids. And so it's hoped that through working with the National Center, we're going to be able to come up with policies, procedures, and plans to kind of deal with these kids again who have arms and legs in both systems. So that's something that we've just started working on within the last couple of months, and so we're kind of excited to see how that's going to go. Um, Collaboration, that's what makes us so successful, I think. For those of you who live in the Greene County area, Greene County is unique, not only in juvenile justice, but just general collaboration throughout this community. This is the most collaborative community that I think I've ever seen, and I think a lot of people who come to work with us, they are amazed at the collaboration that goes on between different stakeholders in this community to try to solve the problems and issues that present themselves to us. And so we continue to work on our youth mental health collaborative. This was something that was started by Julie Austin, who is our director of youth and family programming. And this was created in response to the mental health crisis that's going on in this country and this community, and particularly the lack of services for juveniles, both on the child abuse and neglect side and the delinquency side. That there's simply no places for these kids to go. Kids with behavioral issues are spending months in emergency rooms at hospitals. There is a shortage of mental health professionals. Kids will come into the system with problems, and the partners in the system tend to point fingers at each other. Well, that kid's your problem. No, that kid's your problem. Well, no, that kid's their problem. And the person that ends up suffering is obviously the kid. So we have brought together under the Youth Mental Health Collaborative umbrella virtually everybody in this community, from law enforcement to Cox to St. John's or Mercy to Perimeter to Lakeland to the Division of Youth Services to Children's Division. Anybody who's kind of got a hand in dealing with these kids is part of that. And while we haven't moved mountains yet, we've certainly been able to move small piles of dirt to better serve these kids. So that's I think really been a model, and you don't see that in too many other places. And then we are part of the Gun Violence Collaborative. Again, you can read the paper and see the number of homicides, the number of shots fired calls, and things of that nature. And we really have a gun problem in this community. And so we participate under the community partnership of the umbrella, or community partnership of the Ozarks umbrella, in terms of dealing with gun violence in this community. Again, virtually every stakeholder that touches kiddos is involved in that. It's chaired by Francine Pratt and Clay Goddard. And so that group is doing good work, and they're really trying to emphasize on the front end so that we prevent gun violence, because usually by the time we get involved, something bad has happened. So those are a couple of the collaborative initiatives that we're involved in. What's kind of on the horizon for juvenile law, juvenile justice in 2025? Hard to say. The legislative session will kick in next week, or the 5th or something like that. We always hold our breath when they gavel in the legislature in Jefferson City, because we never know what's coming. So we don't know what their priorities are going to be. But we do know that based on legislative changes last year, we anticipate that the number of certification filings that we will have will go up. And so what a certification is it's about the worst thing that we can do to a youth who has committed a delinquent act. And that is basically saying, kiddo, the act that you committed is so horrible, or, we have run out of stuff for you to try to adjust your behavior, and yet you're still committing felonious behavior, that we have nothing left. And so we're going to ask the court to dismiss the petition that we have filed and turn you over to the adult system. And we've really seen a significant increase in our certifications even before this new legislation started, because again, we had a number of homicides involving juveniles over the last several years. I think prior to about 2021 or so, I don't know, we might have certified 10, 11 kids, something like that, just not very many. And that virtually doubled. So, we're just seeing again kids with access to guns and not afraid to use them. But the new legislative changes essentially has, well, let me go back for a sec. How we doing on time? Um, there are certain mandatory offenses that if you charge a youth with one of these offenses, we used to call them the seven deadly sins. There's more of them now, but things like first degree murder, second degree murder, rape, sodomy, distribution of drugs near, school property, two or more previous delinquency, felony adjudications, that we are required to ask the court to dismiss the case and send that kiddo to the adult system. The court doesn't have to do that, but we are required to file a motion before the court. Well, that has been expanded this year in addition to including the seven deadly sins. Now, any felony that involves a weapon of any kind has to be filed as a certification. And we are finding kids with all kinds of weapons. And it doesn't have to be guns. I understand it can be knives or anything. Yeah. And then they've included dangerous, any dangerous felony is defined statutorily, and dangerous felonies can be what you kind of think of them as, but it also is like operating a boat in an intoxicated condition. I don't know that we're going to have a lot of juveniles operating boats in intoxicated conditions, but who knows? So I think we're really going to see our number of certifications pop up. So that'll be a change. We are continuing. And I know we live in Missouri and we are very pro Second Amendment, but there has got to be some sensible gun legislation keeping guns out of the hands of kids. Right now, if you were to walk down the sidewalk and encounter a 5-year-old carrying an AR-15, that juvenile would not be in violation of any law unless it was stolen or unless he was using it in some way. And that's just crazy. And we'll get calls from the police in the middle of the night, and they go, "Hey, we've stopped this car full of kids. There's 3 or 4 guns in here. Okay, are any of them stolen?" Well, not yet. They haven't been reported stolen yet. Probably they just got stolen. No, they're not stolen. Are they doing anything with them? And no, got nothing. And we all know that a carload of 15-year-olds out at 2 o'clock in the morning, and people get me sick of me saying this, they're not out shooting skeet unless they're looking for a guy named Skeet. I mean, that's the thing. And so we have some legislative friends, who are trying to pass some sensible restrictions that would basically, prevent kids from under the age of 18 from possessing guns, with exceptions, obviously, if they're going hunting or, those kinds of things. But it's been frustrating to us. It's been frustrating to law enforcement. And again, so we're incredibly hopeful that we'll be able to get some kind of sensible gun legislation to keep these guns out of the hands of these kids, that they don't, because again, we're seeing, a 15-year-old that shoots and kills somebody, they've obviously forever altered the life of that person that they killed, and they've obviously forever altered their life as well. So anything that we can do, hopefully, can get something accomplished. And then, of course, we have a new governor coming in this year, and with changes in administrations, we see changes in agency heads. Children's Division, who is a close partner of ours on the child abuse and neglect side. They previously had a director, Daryl Missy. He has since retired. but he was very prevention oriented and again pretty progressive in terms of things he was doing. And so we expect we don't know who the new head of children's division is going to be, but we do know that generally when children's division leadership changes over, it impacts the work that we do. And so we don't know whether we're going to see fewer referrals. We don't know whether we're going to see more referrals or things of that nature. So like I said, we always hold our breath come legislative time. But I think, whoops, going the wrong way again. Let's see. Oh, and then of course, something Kevin can appreciate: continued work on the buildings. As you probably know, we had back September of 2021, 20. I can't. When did we move over to APOD? I can't remember. But anyway, we had the riot of September 11th in detention, and came to realize that that place was not suitable or safe to hold kiddos or for our staff, and so we moved them over to APOD in the jail. And again, thanks to again our staff and the work of the county, we were able to convert what would had been an adult jail pod into a juvenile detention center in about 6 weeks, and so that was some pretty amazing work. But I think decisions made that having a detention center in the middle of a family court building is not really good compatible uses. So we're moved back into the 1111 detention side of things and have detention in that facility, but they're doing a redo on that, new doors, new security, and things of that nature. And I think that's going to work out a lot better for us. So I think there's going to be a lot of dust kicked up in the next couple of years in terms of construction plans and things of that nature. So we're just kind of holding on, and hopefully the guys on our roof don't come crashing through our ceiling, which we're all afraid is going to happen sometimes. So anyway, that's kind of the stuff that's ahead. Again, it's New Year's Eve, so we hope all we can do is cross our fingers and hope that 2025 is a good year for everybody. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything. I know I blew through stuff pretty quick. Guys are an easy crowd. Okay, well, if not, happy New Year, and we'll see you guys next year.